Vinayaka, Vinayaka, Vishwadhara, Vinayaka, 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 Vishnadhara, Vinayaka, Anath Rakshak, Anandadayak, Anath Rakshak, Anandadayak, Uma Maheshwari, He Priyanandan, Vinayaka, Vinayaka, Vishwadhara, Vinayaka, Vinayaka, Vinayaka. Great. So yeah, I posted this little message on the group about climate change, global warming. So right now, a lot of focus is on, the focus is on how do you reduce greenhouse gases. That's what the whole focus is on. There are greenhouse gases, and what are greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases are gases which rise up to the upper layers of the atmosphere, and their properties are such that they do not allow the heat from the earth to escape into the outer space. So heat that enters the atmosphere from the sun warms up the planet, warms up the oceans, warms up the earth, warms up the air, but then the atmosphere allows heat to dissipate into the atmosphere, and that's what keeps the climate balanced. It warms up and it cools down also. But these greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane, these are the key. Methane is carbon and hydrogen, CH4, CO2, N2O. These are the greenhouse gases which are produced, and they trap the heat inside the atmosphere and therefore cause all kinds of changes in the climate, changes in the average temperature, make the earth hot, melt the icebergs, which is part of how the winters happen. The ice, we have the polar ice caps on both poles, which shrink and they melt. When they melt, of course, they melt into the water around them, and the sea levels rise, and all kinds of unpleasant and undesirable effects happen on life, not just human life, but life in general. So where do these gases come from? And a lot of them, especially methane, comes from livestock, the cattle, even pork, the pigs and chicken and cows and buffaloes and goats and sheep. The livestock they are the animals which convert cellulose and grass and things like that which are normally indigestible, but they are able to convert it into energy. But a byproduct of that reaction is methane, and huge amounts of methane are released into the atmosphere by livestock. So that's one big source. So our consumption of chicken and meat is one of the bigger contributions to the greenhouse effect. Although the focus goes on something which is less obvious actually, but more on our radar, which is pollution due to power generation or due to transport, cars. So we tend to focus on things which we want to focus on rather than necessarily focusing on what is important or more impactful. So what we can focus on and which is more in our radar is cars. We use them every day and we see that they are polluting the atmosphere and they produce carbon dioxide and so on. So we opt for electrifying them so that rather than burning fuel, we are now using batteries. So, but this is actually just a band-aid, where you need electricity in order to charge those batteries. First of all, making those batteries themselves, it involves lithium batteries, which mining lithium takes energy, and purifying it takes energy, and so on. So the process of making batteries itself pollutes the earth. On top of that, you need to charge them. So instead of going to the gas station, you go to a electric charging station and feel very wonderful about yourself that you're saving the planet. But surprise, surprise, where did that electricity come from? That electricity came from burning fossil fuels again, either coal or natural gas or petroleum or diesel, or some of it may come from hydroelectric or solar or from wind and some other renewable sources of energy. But by and large, today, the way the infrastructure of electric generation is, or hydroelectric, I was going to say, most of it comes from burning of fossil fuels. In India, for example, most of the electricity comes from there. So all you've done is, instead of the carbon dioxide getting produced by millions of cars, the carbon dioxide gets produced by hundreds or dozens of power plants in larger quantities, much larger quantities than cars would. So all you've done is shifted the problem. You just moved the problem from one place to another, but you've not really addressed the problem. Eventually, yeah, we may come to cleaner sources of energy. We may come to hydrogen, and we may come to which is by burning hydrogen you make water. So the end product of the hydrogen burning is water, and you produce power in the process, and it's, of course, it's a clean end product, water rather than carbon dioxide. So that may happen, and then solar will come, and then wind will come, and all this will come, and we'll have cars that are powered by those. And when we are all done, maybe 15, 20, 30 years down the line with that transformation, we will have addressed all of 14% of the problem. Because the bulk of the problem is not transportation, it's industries. Industries consume power. The gas is produced by livestock, which is almost, I believe it's in the 24, 30% range. So we are looking at it, we are attacking the problem with point solutions rather than looking at the big picture. So we are not only not looking at the big picture of the energy equation from a technology point of view. We are not looking at it from holistically from the demand perspective. So you're looking at the supply side of the problem, supply cleaner energy. But what about the demand itself? Do we really need this much energy to be produced and used and consumed by human beings? Is it required? So when we breathe, we produce about 1 kg of carbon dioxide per day, 1 kilo of carbon dioxide a day. So about 300 and let's say 365. If you exercise or dance and do more than just sitting around, you produce much more, maybe 7 or 8 times that. And so bare minimum for each person, I would say maybe is in the 500 to 700 kilograms of carbon dioxide produced per year per person, just by the act of breathing. So given that that's not going to change anytime soon, we have that as a sort of a baseline. We all need to consume and produce that much carbon dioxide anyway. Of course, this is offset by the trees, which take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, so that all that gets balanced out. If we have enough greenery, we can have a very wonderful balanced situation, and this species can survive and live forever and be happy. But the problem is we are not happy. We are not happy, and we think that we will become happy by producing more and consuming more. That's the thought process. So we are not looking at this demand side of the problem. What if the demand itself went down? Went down from, so an average person in Qatar, which is for whatever reason one of the worst polluters in the world, an average person in Qatar generates 37 tons of carbon dioxide per year. And the bare minimum, as I said, is not even half a ton. So a person has to produce at least half a ton. But somebody in Qatar is producing 37 tons. Each of them are producing on an average 37 tons of carbon dioxide. A fairly comfortable country which has people who travel, who watch TV and consume reasonable amount of energy and have a good standard of life, say Switzerland, they consume only 3 tons per year of carbon dioxide. So clearly they seem to be reasonably well fed and comfortable. In Switzerland, on an average, their standard of living is decent, if not very good. And they can do it with only 3 tons of carbon dioxide. So why 37 tons? Why 14 tons per person in USA? Why 14 tons per person in Canada? Why 10 tons on average in Britain, in the UK, 10 tons, around 7 or 8 tons in Germany, 7 tons in, I believe, Turkey is around that. So India, less than 2 tons per. So if 3 tons per person is like a good, comfortable number, there is a lot of excess demand on energy which is not required. Clearly, we cannot ask people to not be comfortable, to not move around. That's part of being human. But where is the overconsumption coming from? So the demand side is where the biggest impact can be made on this whole situation. The less the demand, the less the pollution, the longer this planet can be sustainable, if not indefinitely, at least for the foreseeable future. Nothing is forever. The sun will eventually gobble up the earth. So that, let's not go there. But at least for a very, 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 very long time, way beyond our, several thousand generations, we will be okay if we learn to manage the demand side of the equation. So what can we do about this excessive demand? So what is the source of this excessive demand? Where does this excessive need to consume come from? Beyond what is comfortable. It clearly comes from wanting more. Ye dil mange more. We want more. We want more. We are trying to satisfy some, yes, industries, but what fuels the industries, or what drives the demand for the industries, is ultimately human demand. People are asking for more goods and more services and more than what they need. In the case of Qatar, more than 10 or 15 times more than, right. So, well, Switzerland also has houses which are heated and air conditioned, and yet they get away with only using 3 tons per year. Whereas America faced 14 tons and Qatar 37 tons. So this excessive demand comes from a vacuum which people feel, which needs to be filled. Vacuum of what? What? Vacuum of peace, vacuum of happiness, vacuum of satisfaction, vacuum of this separation from truth, from peace, from love, from okayness, from joy. That is what they're ultimately looking for. I mean, what does having 3 cars get you when you can get away with just one, or be very comfortable with just one? The wants are more than the need, actually. Exactly. The wants are more than the need, to a point that the need is more like a greed. But what is the source of that also? So we need to look deeper. Why would somebody crave much more than what they need? What is that craving about? And ultimately, if you look at even, our own lives, what do we want things for ultimately? Ultimately, if you say, I want a big house, I want more cars, then you're looking for what? For example, people to appreciate you. You want to provide comforts for your children. Why? Because underneath it all is a need to express and to receive love. We want to express and receive love, and we think somehow having 3 cars instead of 1 will somehow get us more of that. But and of course, there's nothing about cars that gives you love. It's what you do with the cars which you think will give you love. People appreciating it, or people liking you more, or whatever it is. Whether it's all consumption, ultimately is a thirst for love. So, and what is that about? What are we looking for if we take it even the next layer? It's the not realizing that you are already fulfilled. You are already everything. It's the not being able to notice or know or realize that who you are is already joyousness, who you are is already lovingness. And that to express love and to experience love, all that is required is to align your actions and your speech and your thoughts, which you truly are. And that's all that is needed. And we don't know this, we don't realize this, we don't experience this and spend an inordinate amount of time and energy and resources of our own and on the planet on on these objects and services which we think are what it takes to experience that joyousness. So what if people realized that beyond a certain point, the objects of the world don't bring, the law of diminishing returns applies very quickly to things. So not that we all need to be monks and fakirs and yogis. That's not what is being asked for. But why can we let the physical objects be just enough to meet our needs and not our greeds? Not because we are pushing away greed, but the greed itself drops away. That there is no need for the greed to remain. If that situation happens, only then the greed can drop away. We cannot mandate people to drop greed. There will be rebellion and chaos. But if the greed drops away on its own, of its own accord, out of more and more people realizing the true source of their happiness, um, then we can have a major impact on this whole greenhouse pollution. Actually, not just greenhouse gases and not just the energy situation and not just climate change, but the same thing applies to crime. What is crime? Crime is nothing but a greed which goes to such desperate extent that people are willing to act in unloving and violent ways to get that which is ironically and paradoxically the opposite of what they really want. So in order to get love, you think you need the things and the objects, and therefore you act in unloving ways, which is the opposite of the love that you're looking for. So it's a very paradoxical situation. So this decrease in demand will not only impact the climate change issue, it also addresses pretty much every crisis that we face as a species. What else is there? Poverty. Poverty is simply an unjust, as a result of an unjust distribution of wealth. Most of the time, it is an unjust distribution of wealth. It's not that the wealth is not there. It's a matter of distribution. It's not a matter of that poverty is a requirement. The earth is a very abundant space, and there is more than enough for everybody. So it's not about there not being enough. It's about the lack of distribution of wealth. And why is wealth distributed not equally? It cannot be distributed equally, but equitably, justly. Why isn't it? Because there are some very smart people who are also affected by greed. And if you are very smart and greedy, then you wish to accumulate more than you need. And that's how the inequity happens. I mean, there are other factors, of course, but by and large, if people were producing just as much as they produce without needing to take more than what they need, then poverty also can disappear very quickly. Deforestation can disappear, climate change can disappear, crime can disappear. Wars can disappear. War is simply about a competition for resources. And if the demand for resources itself is not such a such a such a deep craving that you are willing to kill people on a large scale, um, war will disappear. So this understanding of oneness, of consciousness, of who we really are, which is already fulfilled, noticing that who you are craves nothing. Who you are is an open space which allows all that there is. That craving and aversion are manufactured by the separate outer self and not properties of the inner self, because the inner self is everything, is all there is. When you're all there is, what can you crave? You are everything. So what will you crave? There is nothing to crave, and you are everything, so there's nothing to push away. So this apparently very, very simple and obvious truth is escaping humanity as of now. And the least we can do is at least do it on our scale, in our lives. Begin with ourselves. Share this understanding and let more and more people arrive at this conclusion. And let this new order get established automatically. And yeah, we may still go for electric cars and hydrogen cars and all of that, but that would be the icing on top rather than what we are banking on, which is not going to be enough. Great. So it all boils down to becoming aware of awareness itself and of our true nature. So any thoughts, questions? हाँ पांडे जी,
जब थॉट की बात चली तो थॉट निकलने को आतुर हैं,
आने दीजिए।
एक्चुअली आज वो बड़ी सफेद सी दाढ़ी दिख रही थी तो इच्छा नहीं थी कि वीडियो ऑन करूं, लेकिन जिज्ञासा जो है वो रोक नहीं पाया मैं।
कोई बात नहीं, हमारी भी सफेद दाढ़ी है।
बस उसी से संबल लेते रहते हैं। तो दरअसल अभी मैंने कल एक न्यूज पढ़ी कि चूहों में वो कुछ एम्ब्रायो डेवलप किए गए चूहों के, और जो आर्टिफिशियल हैं, विदाउट एनी स्पर्म्स एंड एनी सपोर्ट सिस्टम, दैट इज सेड टू बी नेचुरल फॉर द बर्थ। तो एक थॉट आ रहा है कल से ये देख करके कि मतलब आत्मा जैसी चीज कोई है नहीं। जो आप कहते हैं मैं उससे फर्दर रिलेट कर पा रहा हूं कि अपन उस सोच को अगर एक्सपेंड करें, देयर इज समथिंग लाइक कॉन्शियसनेस ओनली, लाइक आकाश। पूरे संसार में आकाश विद्यमान है, इट इज एग्जिस्टेंस इज जस्ट आकाश, स्काई इज देयर, नथिंग एल्स। इवन एनर्जी, एक्चुअली एनर्जी इज देयर इन द आकाश ओनली। Akasha is the param tattva and everything exists there, right? Correct. Everything is there from Akasha, but Akasha is not from anything. Likewise, correct, this life form is just an instrument which manifests in such a form like a window where from all these worldly things are seen.
Correct.
And of course it has got some sort of एक स्वतंत्र अस्तित्व दिया है प्रकृति ने या उसने जो भी किया, कि वो अपने आप को थोड़ा सा इवॉल्व करता है, but still it does not have much power. It only evolves to the extent inside the DNA, whatever memory is there in DNA, that much only it can evolve, or it can go little bit further. Like a robot.
Correct.
आजकल आप IQ की, उस दिन आप बात कर रहे थे ना,
Artificial
आर्टिफिशियल
intelligence.
इंटेलिजेंस, AI की बात कर रहे थे हम.
Correct.
So if like AI, this can also evolve to some extent, but ultimately it has no powers. It's just a window there for a certain period of time, where from this worldly things can be seen, and then it vanishes. That's all.
Right.
Everything, all theories must come inside this only. If they do not fit in this, time will come when they will be discarded. कोई परम आत्मा, कोई इस तरह की चीज, कोई डूम्सडे इस तरह का, या कोई भी ये सब होता नहीं है. आकाश तत्व है अल्टीमेटली, बस. That's all.
Right. The idea of a personal consciousness is very questionable. ये हम सोचते हैं कि I have some personal consciousness. There is no individual or personal consciousness. There is only consciousness. That is only one. It is universal consciousness.
Yes.
And which is showing up as an embryo of a rat, and is showing up as Sanjiv, and is showing up as Pandeyji, and is showing up like this, and trees and flowers and fish and
नहीं,
stars.
बिल्कुल जैसे वो सर्टेन कंडीशंस मीट आउट करता है तो इंसान के रूप में दिखता है. कुछ
Correct.
और कंडीशंस अगर सेटिस्फाई करता है तो हाथी के रूप में दिखेगा, चूहे के रूप में दिखेगा. और कम कंडीशंस फॉलो करेगा वो तो वो चट्टान के रूप में दिखेगा.
Correct.
इट इज ओनली दैट, जो चेतन कहते हैं ना, एक्चुअली इसमें कहते हैं दो हिस्से होते हैं. एक चेतन होता है और एक है जड़ जो बोलते हैं जिसको. तो more chetan is there, more it becomes pranic sort of thing, and more jad is there, it becomes sort of non-living things.
Right. Living and non-living, but even the non-living ultimately is only that, is only consciousness, is only consciousness.
Yeah.
A more refined model of consciousness may be a human being, and a less developed model of consciousness is a rock or a mountain, but still all consciousness, and nothing personal there. एक ही है. Great. Yes. So it is. So if we enjoy this particular game called human life on this particular stage called planet Earth, तो हमें ये बात की समझ को बहुत तेजी से आगे बढ़ाना होगा कि ये ही है, this one consciousness, and I am that, and I don't need to go around destroying this planet in order to satisfy some imaginary greed that I am just artificially creating I'm saying for no reason, but the reason is ultimately the quest, the search for that self, the search for that universal consciousness from which I have come.
That too, actually, ultimately, that too comes out to be futile. Once you know, कहते हैं ना, जाना तो तुम ही हो जाएगी. वो कहा जाता है कि जिस दिन वो तुमको जान जाता है, वो तुम में समा जाता है, फिर जानना बेमानी हो जाता है, उसका कोई अर्थ नहीं रहता है.
अर्थ नहीं रहता. Right. Correct. Beautiful. Any other thoughts, questions, insights? Hello, Sandhya. So tomorrow is, of course, Ganesh Chaturthi, and it is also Samvatsari. I don't know how many of you are familiar or have heard of the Jain Samvatsari. It's the last day of the Paryushan festival in a true sense of the word, of celebrating who you are, not celebrating like a party, but celebrating the self. So this one day where we where we look deeply into all the ways in which we may have unknowingly or knowingly damaged each other or the planet out of our misguided understanding. And then how pratikraman means tracing back. Prati means self, kraman is a akraman jo kehte hain. So you are pratikraman as opposed to akraman is outward, pratikraman is inward. So it's a march towards the self, pratikraman, marching with speed towards your own self. So returning to source, and when you return to source, you understand and realize that, hey, what have I been doing? Which is all this stuff, which is not at all what I really want to do or would like to do. So उसको लेकर एक पूरी क्रिया है of forgiveness of everyone. So I posted that we will be meeting tomorrow. It's a special open door session on Pratikraman at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And so approximately 1.5 hours, 5 to 6:30. So everyone's invited. And you can forward that link to everyone. So because it's, even though it's a Jain tradition, holding on to bitterness and not forgiving, not asking for forgiveness, all this is a common human condition across countries, across religions, across everything. So everyone can benefit from this. So send it to as many people as you can, and let us have a very, very large gathering of people, and we all discover and cleanse our misconceptions, our misguided understanding, which leads to so many false steps. At the end, of course, nothing is false. It is, everything is that. But there are steps which go towards self, and there are steps which go away from self. And yeah, and ultimately nothing is away from self. But and yet some things are consistent with the qualities of the self as far as we can tell, and some things are not consistent. So uski और चलते हैं.
How interesting it is. मतलब कि सत भी वही कुछ नहीं है, असत भी कुछ नहीं है, सब कुछ
वही है, सब कुछ वही है. Yeah, and this thought about what is the absolute then? Is it awareness, or is it something? Is there something even beyond?
अभी उस पे we will have to ponder upon it.
ये pondering हम Saturday को करेंगे, इस Saturday को. Right?
Thursday नहीं आने वाले.
Thursday आ रहा हूँ. Thursday I'll be there, but this particular talk we will have on Saturday about what is the absolute. So great. Anything else anyone would like to?
थोड़ा कभी कभी क्या है, जो सांसारिक चीजें है ना, जो यहाँ सब चलता रहता है, वो सब सेलिब्रेशन ऑफ लाइफ है. तो वो कई फॉर्म में अलग अलग तरीके से हो सकता है. जैसे आपने बताया कल वो पर्व है, गणेश चतुर्थी है. आज हमारे यहाँ सीमती जी ने कुछ व्रत रखा हुआ है, हरितालिका तीज व्रत.
अच्छा.
तो पार्वती जी ने शिव जी को प्राप्त करने के लिए जो व्रत किया था,
वाह,
वो व्रत आज भी महिलाएं यहाँ नॉर्थ में करती हैं.
अच्छा.
तो आज पूरे दिन द होल डे निर्जला व्रत होता है.
ओ वाह.
जैसे अपना वो 1 महीने करते हैं, इसमें भी पर्यूषण में भी करते हैं,
पर्यूषण में भी करते हैं. या.
तो कुल मिला के वो इट शुड टर्न इनटू सेलिब्रेशन ऑफ लाइफ.
राइट.
तो कभी कोई एक बोल रहा था मोरे से कि भाई आजकल आप ओपन डोर में नहीं आते. मैंने पूछा तो बोले वो थोड़ा सा हमारे सिर के ऊपर से जाता है.
सच है.
मैंने कहा कभी कभी थोड़ा सा लौकिक चीजों पे भी सेलिब्रेट कर लिया करें अपन। मैंने कहा वो गाने भी तो गाते हैं बॉलीवुड के,
right, right.
वो भी एक आनंद की अनुभूति है।
Of course, of course, of course. Yes, certainly. Yep, yep.
हमेशा लौकिक में रहो ना तो थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है, इसीलिए वो सगुण अवतार की परिकल्पना आई है, हाइपोथेसिस ऑफ दैट सगुण अवतार,
हाँ,
क्योंकि निर्गुण सबको समझ में नहीं आता था।
निर्गुण समझ में नहीं आता था।
तो क्या होता है,
Absolutely.
सगुण के अंदर निर्गुण निहित है, बट निर्गुण में सगुण को लाना बड़ा मुश्किल काम है, संभव नहीं है।
Correct, correct, correct. Right. सही है, लेकिन हम 24 घंटे तो सगुण में ही घूमते रहते हैं, इसीलिए ओपन डोर कम से कम 1-1.5 घंटा तो इस निर्गुण अवस्था में की ओर चले। That's the idea. क्योंकि निर्गुण में नॉर्मली जीते नहीं है हम, that is not present in our normal life, so that is why it is important. But yeah, everything is welcome, it is all that. हाँ, तो वो भी कर लेंगे, उनको वापस बुलाइए। Wonderful. Okay, so good.
So what is nirgun?
Oh, nirgun means without form. Gun means like form or qualities. So this life, the normal life, it is, everything that we interact with, whether it's objects or people or cars or whatever, everything has form and has qualities. But that source from which all of these qualities emerge, that itself is without form. It has no form. If you ask yourself, am I there? And don't give an answer, but actually go there, where you go to find out whether you are there. When you go there, instead of giving a word or an answer, you find that that place has no form, has no shape, has no color, has no particular size, time, qualities. So usi ko nirgun avastha hai. So wahan se jate hain, there is no form. It is just like space. Right? That's what.
Right.
Right. So yeah, normally the 20, out of all the hours in our life where we are working, cooking, talking, playing, whatever, we are only interacting with that aspect of the nirgun, which has taken form, taken shape, whether it is words or thoughts or feelings or action or people or objects. It is all form. And we are not aware of the nirgun from which all of this comes. So here at least we remind ourselves, कि अरे भाई, this is where the basis is. Foundation तो ये है, उसके साथ भी रहो, और उसके साथ रहने के बाद जब सगुण में भी वापस जाते हैं, then the quality and experience of that sagun avastha also shifts. How many people do we know who are bored of life? Teenagers who commit suicide in spite of having every object and every entertainment and every resource available. Uske bawajud they commit suicide because ultimate satisfaction is not in the world of objects. The ultimate satisfaction is in the formless, in the true source. तो जैसे नींद में हम क्यों जाते हैं? Why is sleep so dear to all of us? Because open door हो ना हो, कम से कम नींद तो है ही, to get into that nirgun avastha. It is, the craving for sleep is nothing but a thirst for divine. We want to be and reach back into that formless self that we truly are. And we get tired of playing this, acting this role. And
मुझे लगता है
हाँ,
मुझे लगता है हमारा सारा क्रेविंग वो उसी के लिए है।
या
हर चीज में हम वही ढूंढ रहे हैं एक्चुअली में।
ढूंढ रहे, एक्चुअली वही ढूंढ रहे, वही ढूंढ
मटेरियलिज्म
रहे
में भी हम
और दिन भर उसमें ढूंढ के थक जाते हैं, इसलिए सो जाते हैं फिर, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली वहां तो है ही, in that deep sleep where we drop all objects, we touch for a moment that which we truly are. So
एक्चुअली
So
क्या
for-
हो रहा है कि वो सगुण रूप में कहीं कहीं उसकी झलक मिल जाती है, एहसास, वो जो आनंद स्वरूप को हम जो है, जो अल्टीमेट डिलाइट है, उसका
Correct.
कहीं एक किरण कहीं कहीं मिल जाती है और आदमी
Right.
उसी में रमा रहता है, जबकि
Right.
अल्टीमेट वो है जो सुख है।
राइट राइट, और वही तो चीजें हैं जिसमें जो हमें सबसे ज्यादा अच्छी लगती है, जैसे संगीत है, जैसे आर्ट है, जैसे डांस है, जैसे पोएट्री है. Why do we love all this stuff? Because somehow it reminds us of that nirgun. All song, all music, it reminds us of that divine state. And that is why it is much more valued and much more something that moves us much more than other objects. Because that quality is little more obvious. Varna, everything is that. Everything can remind us of that, actually. If we were really finely tuned, each and every object, each and every person is a miracle. As miraculous as, whatever piece of art or music. But some of these things are easier to connect with the divine, like music, like nature, like silence, like poetry, like sculpture, all of that. So great. But yeah, so if we can move towards that state in which everything appears like art, everything appears like a miracle, each person appears like divine, then life has a much that quality of a, तो वही जागृत अवस्था हो जाएगी, and तो तब जाके उस नींद से हम जागेंगे. So that is also possible. Great. Thank you for a wonderful beingness together, and look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow at 5, and forward that invite to everybody on your lists and groups. Okay, great.
Thank you.